Thanksgiving, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Point Spread, brought to you by BetFred Sports. A full disclosure tonight, we are recording. So this is a recorded version of Behind the Point Spread. So some of the lines that you see tonight may have adjusted just a little bit as the week has gone along and we get closer to the games. Before we get started tonight, a quick reminder, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's very simple. If you're watching on YouTube right now, just reach down, hit the subscribe button. You'll be ready to go. You'll get all the content that Dr. Rob and I produce on a weekly basis. That includes the podcast. That includes the Doc's Diagnosis and this Behind the Point Spread. You heard me mention Dr. Rob Zatechka. We also mentioned Scott Spreitzer, who joined us for Behind the Point Spread. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you.
Good to be here.
Happy Thanksgiving.
These games.
You know, I asked this to Dr. Rob in the podcast, Scott. He's not a turkey guy. He's going surf and turf. Okay, so he's either going lobster tail, he's going some crab legs, maybe some salmon. I don't know what he's doing. Are you a turkey guy?
I am turkey and ham and stuffing and cranberry sauce and everything else through and through. But the wife isn't. So we end up going to an Italian restaurant here in Las Vegas that does both a Thanksgiving traditional dinner and you can also order any pasta you want. So she usually goes the pasta seafood route, loves crab legs. She can get that kind of stuff. And I can sit there and stuff my face with all the traditional Thanksgiving foods. And again, I can eat that like 5 days a week, that stuff. So I'm always happy when it comes around.
See, that sounds perfect to me. That's like utter perfection right there. Everybody gets what they want.
Yep.
See, what I hear you both saying is it's perfect because nobody has to do dishes afterwards. I mean, there's no cleanup whatsoever.
I mean, we'll have some. I was going to say 75% of what we're going to eat is going to be grilled.
That's fair. Man, I'm coming over to your house, Rob, for Thanksgiving dinner.
The grill will be fired up.
Before we get started, I'm wearing a vest. I'm hotter than hell right now. Dr. Rob's got a T-shirt on. What are you wearing, Scott? You got a jersey on?
Man, I got a display. It's Go Rebels, baby. UNLV 9-2, just like you thought they'd be. You guys, called it right.
Whose number is 88?
I couldn't tell you. There is no 88. I don't think on the roster.
I didn't know if that was like an old Cunningham number. Or...
My daughter probably bought this for me a few years ago or something, and it's just a number. But we're happy. We're having a blast out here, and I'll be at the game against San Jose State on Saturday afternoon as they look to wrap up the Mountain West Conference title.
Wow.
And, this is a team that hasn't been bowling in 10 years. Nebraska fans can kind of relate, but it's a team, they used to win 8-9 games every year. And then around, 90, 92, somewhere in there, they just fell on their butts and have never recovered. And so it's been lose. And I had season tickets, for many, many years. I'd be out there at the end of the year. There'd be 8,000 people in the Sam Boyd Stadium, cold and desert and out in the middle of nowhere. And that wind is sweeping in, dirt's blowing in your face. And
hold on.
Yeah.
What's cold?
Well, desert at night can be cold, Rob.
Give me a number.
It can, the real feel could be like 35, 38 degrees.
I'm wearing shorts at 38 degrees, Rob. I don't know about you. I'm wearing shorts.
That's like the Nebraska thing. It's like, ooh, it warmed up to 38. Throw on a hoodie and a pair of cargo shorts.
That's exactly right. Got the Crocs on, maybe a pair of, ankle socks. We'd be ready to go. 38 degrees.
I'm not, if it's 38, do you really need the socks? It's kind of overkill.
Yeah, I'd probably go with the wool socks just to make sure I stayed somewhat warm on my feet.
Well, and of course, now they're playing in Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play, so it's a comfortable 72 degrees there every Saturday.
Damn, I didn't know they were playing there. Hey, before we get started, remember, you can work with Scott Spreitzer on a weekly basis. Just text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get a free trial, $60 trial, the premium member picks from Scott, or visit DocSports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left-hand side. The good friends at BetFred Sports have a no-sweat first bet offer for you. When you sign up with BetFred and make your first wager of $20 or more, it will be matched with a Fred bet up to $105 if your bet loses. So you can't go wrong, right? You're going to get your money back if you lose. Use the promo code RUSH. That's RUSH. And keep in mind, the promo code is case sensitive. And don't forget about the parlay bonus. When you place 9 football parlays, the 10th parlay is on Fred. Get rewarded with up to a $100 $1 bet each week of the pro football season. Use the promo code parlay. So here are the 4 games we have for you tonight. There's some good ones coming up this weekend as we've reached the final week of the regular season of college football. We've got Farmageddon down in Manhattan, Kansas, as Iowa State takes on Kansas State. What they used to call this the Civil War, but now they're all politically correct out there in Oregon. So now it's the rivalry series as Oregon State takes on Oregon. Then the game, which is Ohio State and Michigan. And then finally, it is the Heroes game, a made-up trophy game between Nebraska and Iowa as the Hawks travel with a 9-2 record. Nebraska needing a win to go bowling. So I actually think.
Can I interject here really quick?
Sure.
Okay, the Heroes Trophy thing, the made-up one with Iowa and Nebraska.
Yeah.
Like I always thought that was a little overkill as well.
I agree.
It's like socks with Crocs when it's 38.
Well, it was Hy-Vee that sponsored it first. Now it's Pioneer Seeds. It's just this sponsorship crap that.
I get it, and it's all good, and I understand. It's the Big Ten, so they want a trophy game for everything. I didn't realize there's a trophy for the Nebraska-Wisconsin game.
I just saw that this weekend. I had no idea either.
I had no clue, and apparently it's a thing, but it's not a thing.
It's so not a thing.
Unless it's related, yeah. When it comes to, unless it's somehow related to Paul Bunyan, a pig, or a spittoon, it's not a thing.
I'm with you. And who has the old oaken bucket?
That's Purdue, Indiana.
Is that who's Indiana and who?
Purdue. That's a pretty cool one.
Yeah,
but,
I mean Floyd's great.
Yeah.
Paul Bunyan's axe is great. The
but do
Paul
you know?
Bunyan trophy's great.
Do you guys know the biggest and most expensive rivalry trophy in college football? Do you know what it is?
Montana State.
Fremont Cannon, Reno and UNLV.
Oh,
the Fremont Cannon.
It's an actual cannon.
Yes, and it's probably about 3 feet tall and about 8 feet long, and it can work. And it's been painted red for a couple of years now, by the way.
Do they fire it? Because if they don't,
I don't know if they fire that one anymore. Yeah, I don't know if they fire that one anymore. It's, the school paints their colors on it when they win. And, I got to go head to head against my daughter who's at Reno. And of course, my school is UNLV. So, but it's a huge trophy. And I heard the other day, it's the most expensive and the biggest rivalry trophy in college football, as you would expect, because we are the college football hotbed.
So here's a question for you. Did you actually go to UNLV?
Yeah, when I came out here, I first started enrolled at UNLV, and I went to I studied, check this out, I studied Japanese, and I studied like broadcast journalism. And guys, you're gonna laugh.
You and Trav, you're the same.
No, I didn't study Japanese, Rob.
You studied journalism.
Well, I gotta clarify it though, because my whole goal at that point was I was going to go to Japan and I was going to call or do color for Japanese baseball for 5 years and then come back to the States. That was the plan. Now, I did not finish at UNLV. I got to clarify that too, because second year into my college experience, my experience became the Palace Station Sportsbook during March Madness. And I was like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is why I came out here.
I'm good at this.
And that was it. And I actually was placed in my second year of school at a radio station, sports radio station in Las Vegas. And then by the time I was 20, not even 21, I had the very first daytime sports betting talk show in Las Vegas called Sunrise Sports. It was from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. And all I did was talk sports betting for 2 hours Monday through Friday. And that was when I was like 20. So, I guess
that's like that's got to be like a dream job.
It was I loved it. I'm not complaining, guys.
That is cool, though.
You notice they didn't give Rob a scalpel or a needle at age 20. They made him wait till he's in his 30s to get rid of it.
Okay, well, I waited till I was in my 30s because I was still strapping on a helmet and shoulder
That's true.
pads.
Touche, my friend. Touche. Hey, let's kick things off today with Iowa State and Kansas State. The Cyclones played tough against Texas, just couldn't get the win. Kansas State had to rally to beat Kansas last week. I'm kind of surprised at this. Again, this is an early line. Kansas State -10 against the Cyclones. the over-under at 47.5. Scott, I got to be honest with you, that 10 surprises the hell out of me.
Yeah, it was 9 on Sunday night. So it's gone from 9 to 10 already. And like you told everybody, we're recording this on Monday early evening, and the numbers already jumped to 10 everywhere. I still like it at 10, by the way. I like K-State here. We talked about it last week. They're 14 points away from being 11-0 right now. And then again, that one of those losses was by a field goal to a pretty good Missouri football team who's playing well. So that loss doesn't look too bad, obviously, at this point of the season. And you can also remember last week we said K-State runs and stops the run. They forgot about stopping the run, and KU was able to get up and down the field on the ground against them, which did surprise me a little bit. Here's the thing, though. Iowa State doesn't run. I mean, they're 108th in rushing yards per game. They got 9 yards on 21 carries last week against Texas. If Iowa State was going to upset somebody, I think it would have been last week. I think they're in trouble this week. And, you see the numbers there. And we talked about Kleiman, 38-20 against the spread now after last week's spread loss at K-State. And how about 17-5 against the spread as home chalk? And they win those home games by 22 points per game. So I don't expect Kleiman to lose against the spread 2 weeks in a row. They had their close call last week. I just think this is at least a 2-touchdown win.
Yeah, look at Iowa State straight up 1-8 against Kansas State in its last 9 games in Manhattan, and Kansas State 8-2 against the spread in his last 10 games against opponents in the Big 12. Kleiman's an interesting cat, right? Do you think he's a lifer at K-State? He's getting up there in age, but there's some pretty good jobs coming open. Do you think somebody goes after Chris Kleiman?
How old is he now?
I think he's 56, 57.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's pushing 60. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, he seemed, like you said, he's an interesting guy. And I know he had a couple of opportunities last offseason. It's all about this and how much it means to you, the cabbage. If he gets some big offer, which I don't know why he wouldn't, by a program that could afford him. I don't know why he wouldn't get a few big offers, but it's all about the money and how much that means to him the rest of the way. Because, let's think about it. Are you into security at this point as a college coach? Because if you are, you stay at Manhattan, you're likely going to win 9 games a year. You're going to be in the top 20, on a perennial situation. Or do you want to go to a place where you got to win 10 games for the hometown fans and all the alums to be happy? So I think it depends on money. And I think he's going to get several offers. I mean, again.
But he's such a good fit there.
Yeah.
And on occasion, it's not often, but every so often, K-State opens up their pocketbooks and shells it out.
Mm-hmm. He's been able to. You remember when Ron Prince went to Kansas State? He separated the Snyder guys. The Snyder fan base and support group has, I think, joined Chris Kleiman, which to be able to keep that culture was very, very huge.
100%. I mean, he's a run the ball guy. He's an O-line guy. That offensive line at Kansas State's outstanding. I mean, that's a really, really good group. I mean, across the board. I mean, I would kill to have that in Lincoln right now.
You mentioned like Ron Prince. It's like you can always tell like if a guy doesn't last long at a certain school and he's kind of an up and comer in the coaching world, and then you don't hear about him again as a head coach, maybe an assistant, but not a head coach. It kind of tells you that they missed, the shot on that one. They missed the target. I mean, it's like Ron Prince, Pelini. Nobody's running to Pelini asking him to be their head coach at any significant program. So you kind of find out either their personality is screwed up, which I've heard is Pelini. I don't know that for a fact. And then, as far as Ron Prince, it didn't work as a head coach. And he was a pretty good coordinator before that.
Some guys are really good coordinators and not good head coaches. And sometimes it's the opposite.
I've told this to Rob, and Rob and I have talked about this many times. Some of the best interactions I've ever had with a head coach has been Bo Pelini. He was always great to me, very gracious. His sideline antics didn't always match what was off the field, but sometimes.
That was kind of a unique situation. I'll still go back, and it's the fact that the guy coached for 2 seasons, maybe 3, knowing that his athletic director, well, I don't know about the athletic director because it was Osborne, but knowing that the university chancellor wanted to fire him.
Bingo. There is.
Yeah, it's like you got a guy who's sitting there going, okay, it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
They literally had to replace Osborne to get rid of Pelini.
Yep. 100%. And they did that without even Tom Osborne's knowledge. Oh, boy.
Osborne had no idea he was getting replaced.
We could go on and on and on.
Yeah,
about
we're
Harvey
tangenting
Perlman.
here. Anyway,
yes, we are tangenting.
Here's the thing. I am not surprised by the -10 K-State.
Real God, I'm the only one here. I'm the only one who's sitting there going, man, I think Iowa State, if its defense shows up like it did against Texas, they can hold them. But
I was surprised it was under 10 last night on Sunday night. So
yeah, the only thing that I'm surprised about here is the fact that we're not taking bets on how many railway cars full of Busch Light are going to get drank.
Well, that's true. There will be a lot of Busch Light consumed in Manhattan. Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to have to take your guys' word for it because you two are the smart ones. I'm the dumb one on the show. You two are the smart ones.
I don't know. I look at -10 K-State. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
As well as Iowa State's played this year since that Ohio loss, I'm still going with K-State.
All right.
The lack of a running game is what bothers me, Travis. It's so one-dimensional.
With Iowa State, you mean?
What's that?
With Iowa State, you mean?
Yeah, their offense is so one-dimensional. And I'm thinking Kleiman, he obviously one of the top coaches we talk about every week, and he doesn't lose as a home favorite. And I think they're going to approach this game as we just got to worry about them making a few passes and let's dare them to run a little bit because they can't.
And Kansas State still with a shot at the Big 12 title game. That whole Big 12 thing is messed up if you look at all the tiebreakers and stuff like that. It's trying to figure out who's going to play.
I always love it when you hop on social media and people are putting out there
yes,
here's the official tiebreakers for.
It's messed up. Of course, Oregon still has a chance at the college football playoff. You have the rivalry series now. They used to call this a Civil War, but they got to be politically correct out there in Oregon. It's Oregon State and Oregon. The Ducks, a 13.5-point favorite, over under at 62. They're expecting a lot of points scored in this baby.
Yeah, I live in Las Vegas where politically correct is just the opposite of what politically correct is everywhere else, especially in the Northwest. So it's still the Civil War. It's still the Red River shootout, between Texas and Oklahoma, all this other goofy stuff. Anyway, this line, being at 13.5 is a little interesting. This game being played on Friday. And, I look at Oregon and I'm like, man, they run well. They run for 200 yards per contest. They only give up about 95, 96 yards per game. I love those dichotomies late in the season when you got a team that's got better than a 2-to-1 ratio, what they rush for as to what they allow. And that's the Oregon Ducks. They got a little revenge. Remember last year's game, they're up 34-17 with 13 and a half minutes to go in the game. Oregon State scores 21 straight points, goes on to win it by 4. And Oregon State ran for 270 on 40 carries in that game. It was crazy. And, the Ducks just aren't allowing that so far this season. They're not giving up a lot of rushing yardage. And I look at what Oregon State has done to make improvements. They went out and they got Uiagalelei, who has, absolutely had a rebirth, so to speak, being in Oregon State rather than at Clemson. He protects the ball well. He's only got 6 picks on the year, but he's not a really accurate passer. He's still around 57% on the season. The defense did that fantastic job last week on Washington, especially in the second half. I took a deep breath. I don't think I actually inhaled and exhaled a full breath the entire second half. When that game was over, it was like I had just played in that football game for 60 minutes. But listen, the secondary, they've been terrific all season. Here's where I think Oregon State can make some noise potentially. I know it sounds crazy with these two, but keep this game under 62. You look at Bo Nix, 35 touchdown passes, only 2 picks. He leads the nation in completion percentage, 78% completion rate. But check this out. Looking back at the metrics, 65% of the passes Bo Nix has thrown this year has been in the air for less than 10 yards. It's all dump offs and yards after catch. If Oregon State, who's got a fantastic secondary, can clamp down on that a bit, which nobody really has thus far against the Ducks, then they can keep this game close. I think because of that, because OSU is going to have to run the football, that it stays a little under 62. That's kind of what I'm looking at early in the week. I'm kind of waiting to see that if that total is going to go up a little bit more, then it might come in on the under. And I know that's dangerous ground when you're talking about the Ducks and Beavers and you're talking about playing under 62. But boy, when I look at how they move Oregon, I just keep thinking OSU, they've got a shot to make some noise in this game if that secondary continues to play well.
Wow, that would really rock the system too, right? Because Oregon and Washington can't afford to lose if they want to be in the college football play.
I don't think Oregon's going to lose, by the way, guys. I don't think they're going to lose this game. I just don't know if they're going to get that 2-touchdown cover.
And if you look at the total, has gone over in the 15 of Oregon's last 20 games against Oregon State. So you're kind of leaning towards the under on this one?
Yeah, that's where I lean right now early in the week. And like I said, it's kind of dangerous ground to talk about under in the Civil War, but that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Just because the way teams, their offenses are compared to where they were last year. Like I said, Oregon State, I mean, they ran for 270 yards in that game last year. Nobody's rushing the football against Oregon this year. And I think OSU, because of that, is going to have to do a little bit of dumping off. They will have to try to establish the run. But then when I looked at Bo Nix's numbers and I saw everything is basically, think about that. 7 out of his 10 passes don't travel past 10 yards in the air. It's all this yak after he throws the ball and they complete it and they bust these open runs.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, with a quarterback like that in a system like that, I mean, you can always make the argument it's ball control.
Sure.
Now, again, I agree with you. That also indicates that the under is the way to go because ball control offense. Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're going to score a crap ton if they're shooting the under, but man, some of those games I look at with Oregon where, I mean, I don't know if Colorado's a good example anymore, but
yeah, I don't know if Colorado's a measuring stick. Yeah,
they're not measuring stick for anybody. What was the final score in that Oregon-Washington game? I'm blanking on it. It was like so long ago.
36-33 Washington.
Yeah. Okay.
It pushed for just about everybody. It's a 3-point line.
Washington's been hanging on the edge last couple of weeks. I mean, that's interesting. That's why this last week you got Washington State, which, by the way, just up their series through 2028. That's good to see. Even though they're separating out of leagues, they're going to continue to play that rivalry, which I like to see. But Washington's been really hovering on the edge, and they're playing with fire when it comes to the college football playoff. Hey, let's go to the game, which is Ohio State at Michigan. This is so interesting. Of course, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be coaching in it. If Michigan wins, it goes to the Big Ten title game to play Iowa. If Ohio State wins, the Buckeyes would go to the Big Ten title game to play Iowa. Right now, Michigan, a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under at 46.5.
It's down to 3 in some shops. I mean, This line was, 4.5 at a couple of shops on Sunday night, Monday morning. Those are gone. There are some 3.5s out there, but it's almost all 80% of the books have a 3-point spread on this one. And I'll start with this, that, I make Michigan on a neutral field 1.5 points better than Ohio State on a neutral field. And you probably throw a 4 spot, at least I do, for Ann Arbor. So you're talking about a raw power rating at home for Michigan of 5.5 points better than the Buckeyes. So I'm having a hard time thinking, well, do I want to take the dog here? And I don't normally take, a team that's 2.5 points away from my power ratings. And, as far as the Buckeyes, they get a lot of praise, but, they really haven't beaten anyone by margin. They got the fortunate win over Notre Dame. We'll give them credit because they did what they had to when they had to get it done. But most of us have Dame power rated about 10th. Same with Penn State. These two teams took on Penn State. We have them power rated anywhere from 8 to 11, depending on whose power ratings you use. And Michigan steamrolled Penn State, where the Buckeyes were in a 13-6 game, late in the fourth quarter. Michigan, they didn't even have to throw a pass in the second half, as everybody knows. And they just steamrolled that team. That was a beatdown. The score didn't tell the whole story there at the way they controlled the line of scrimmage and how physical they were. So I did think that maybe we saw a weakness, relatively speaking, guys, in Michigan's defense last week. Maryland threw a ton of short passes. They only ran for 15 yards because they didn't seem to care about the run. They knew they weren't going to run against Michigan. They started throwing these little dink and dumps that were turned into extra yardage after a catch. And Michigan looked like they had some problems with that. It's the first, I don't know if you want to call it this serious, but first chink of the armor that I've seen out of Michigan this season for me. They threw the 2 picks, the Terps, which was the difference in the game. And listen, when I looked at Ohio State, I still think their defense is slightly better than Michigan's. J.J. McCarthy finally faced some adversity last week. He only went 12 for 23 with a pick. That's a little scary as you're going into your big game. They looked beatable last week for the first time this year. And I'm just wondering if McCord, I think he's got the skill, if they're going to be able to run some of those dump off, those check downs and that kind of stuff like Maryland did last week. And if they do, they can pull the upset. My matchups say Ohio State, guys. My power ratings say Michigan.
So is that like your head and your heart?
I'm asking, like what are the metrics and the numbers that you rely upon normally? What's that saying here when you?
It's like probably 55-45 in favor of Michigan, and that goes into how I make my power ratings and all that. So that's why I come up with this 5.5 point home number. That's all power ratings using nothing but metrics, taking the emotion, taking what you just saw the previous week, and that's also, guys, by the way, why I make my numbers a full week in advance. So I made the number for this game before Michigan played Maryland. And that doesn't influence my power rating. Now, if I'm a bookmaker behind a counter at a Las Vegas casino, I got to take all that into effect because the public is thinking what they just saw more than anything else. Mine is like compiled stats and metrics where one game cannot sway you too far away from where that should be, your power ratings. And so before those games last week, I had Michigan 5.5 in this game. And now I've got to sit there and decide if what I saw against Maryland was, a flat spot or if Maryland found a little weakness in that Michigan defense.
Okay, so here's my question. All of these games we're looking at, I mean, maybe not necessarily Kansas State, Iowa State, but you look at Oregon State, you look at Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, these are big rivalry games.
Yeah.
You can't remove emotion from that.
Mm.
I mean, it definitely plays in. And all of this, I mean, this is the one time a year where you look at these specific games that all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you maybe have to account for that. How much does that play in?
I don't play a lot of rivalry games late in the year. I might play, SMU TCU in week 3. But when we get towards the end of the season, it's like I stay away from a lot of these games. I really do.
I'm talking about like the old school Nebraska, Oklahoma, right, the Miami, Florida States, the
Clemson, what I do,
South Rob? Carolinas. I mean, are those games that you just look at and you're saying there's too much emotion involved? The value's not there from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, and especially now. I mean, if you like the Buckeyes, it's down to 3. You're not gonna bet the Buckeyes here, even if they're gonna win outright. You're not gonna bet them at 3 if you're a pro bettor, and you could have had 4.5. That's just not gonna happen at this point. So what happens here's the kind of talking about what you were saying when it comes to these rivalry games and the traditional rivalry games that have been going on for years. I do more. I mean, I'll put a power rating on them the week before. I'll look at it, look how it is against the spread, and then a lot of times, especially if it's a couple of really good football teams clashing like the Buckeyes and the Wolverines, I just have to pass that game. And in college football, I've talked about it before that going back like 30 years, it's like the average margin away from the point spread is over 12 points per game. And if you look at this Buckeyes-Michigan series, you've seen a lot of double-digit games of late between these two. What I like to do late in the season, especially when I'm looking for, maybe a little bit bigger play than I might normally make on a Saturday, maybe I have 1 or 2 big plays and a bunch of one-unit plays, so to speak. What I'll do is I'll look for favorites that are laying more than a touchdown and no more than 14. And the reason I kind of landed on that many, many years ago, this late in the season for games, is because if they're more than a touchdown favorite, you basically know who should win that football game. They're not going to always do it. You know who's going to win outright. Excuse me. And if they're laying more than 14, then you're talking about a team that has to, they got to have the foot on the gas pedal for most of the 4 quarters. So if you look at that 8 to 14 range, basically for me, I kind of got a feeling who's going to win the game. Now I just got to find reasons for them to get over that 14. And that's what I tend to do late in the season when I'm looking to bet on favorites. But you're right, man. Ohio State, Michigan, I'm probably not going to mess with that. It probably won't make my card. Unless I see something in the next couple of days, it's not going to make my card.
Dr. Rob quotes you a lot on the podcast just about, if you were to lose a key player and what does that do to the line? I didn't ask you this last week, but when Michigan doesn't have Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines, does not having your head coach on the sideline affect the line at all for you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, even if he's up in the box or he's, at his house and he's Skyping in directions, and I'm kidding when I say that, but the bottom line is just not having his presence on the sideline, I think hurts Michigan, no doubt about it. He's coaching them up obviously in practice, but, and Rob's probably the guy to answer. I mean, if you look to the sideline, and Tom Osborne has been suspended, you've got great assistant coaches, but is it the same feel? Is it the same confidence that you have when he's not out there?
Okay, see, in my mind, this is apples and oranges because Tom Osborne was Nebraska's offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach. He's the head coach. You kind of let McBride run the defense. And I think Michigan's fine in that regard defensively. I don't know what Harbaugh does. And so, Travis brings this up. It's a great question because I'm sitting here going, well, I mean, okay, let's take Iowa, for instance. I mean, I get it, the whole thing with Ferentz and the chess game he plays with field position. But, I mean, you've got Parker's still the D coordinator at Iowa, correct?
Absolutely. He gets total autonomy with that.
Okay. Let him run the defense. Special teams is going to do their things. Does it really matter if Ferentz is there, if Kirk is there?
Well, no.
I mean, from a moral standpoint, I get it.
Moral standpoint,
right?
Yeah.
But that's the same thing with Michigan. Is I'm sitting here going like, okay, I mean, like, I understand you've got your CEO, and he's not going to be there. But how much is that guy actually from a game day decision standpoint? What is he actually? What's his role? With Osborne, it was huge. He was the guy calling the plays.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the guy with the in-game strategy.
So, what you say, Rob? Answer this? I mean, just a good way to answer this with Harbaugh. If he was excluded or banned or whatever from all activities for 3 weeks, I make Ohio State the favorite in this game. But he's been there
100%. I totally agree.
Practice every single day in practice. So
yeah, if he can still coach, if he can be there all week. Okay, you just can't be there for that 3 hours on the sideline.
Yeah.
No,
that makes a lot of sense.
I think it becomes pretty marginal. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
No, I can agree with that. And you're right. There's a completely difference not being able to prepare your team as opposed to just not being there on Saturday.
I mean, for most of these guys, 98% of what they're doing happens Monday through Friday.
Good point.
The only coach I've seen doing nothing on the sideline, I got to be honest, for the last 4 or 5 weeks in the second half has been Deion Sanders. I'm sorry. What's he done? I mean, he's getting totally out adjusted.
Totally like this. Half. Oh, yeah.
I like the decorative headset and microphone flipped up that he wears.
You mentioned the rivalry game. I still say this is a rivalry game. Some people don't want to talk about it, but I'll say it.
I'm with you.
It's the Heroes game, Iowa at Nebraska. It's a 11 o'clock game on Friday, Black Friday game on CBS. Nebraska, a 1.5 favorite right now. This is the funny one, 26.5.
All-time record.
Ooh, 26.5.
I saw a 26 out there today, guys. So it's even lost that half point off the 20. I was joking with there's a sports book director here in town. His name is Dwayne Colucci. And I was saying to Dwayne, I texted him and then I put it on Facebook about, listen, I got an over-under for you on number of offensive touchdowns scored in this game. But if you make it 2.5, I probably got to go under, in a combined offensive touchdown situation. But you know what? When I was a kid and the few times Nebraska and Iowa played, I always thought of it as a border war. And, my friends did. And that goes back to like Larry Station when he was playing defense.
Yeah, you look at kind of that 80 to 82 time period.
Yeah. Omaha boy, I think he went to Central and he ends up going to Iowa, Larry Station. So anyway, as far as this game.
Academics.
What's that?
He went for the academics.
Oh, open door policy in Iowa City? Or no, I'm kidding.
Have you ever met Larry Station, Trav?
Smart dude, man.
Was he?
Dude, he's a smart dude.
Yes, smart dude.
What is he doing now, by the way?
Gosh,
he's back in Omaha. Yeah, he's in Omaha.
Yeah, but he lives a pretty private life. He played for the Steelers, but he just kind of lives a private life and does his own little thing. He was running the grocery store for a little bit.
Yeah, I thought two daughters were outstanding high school golfers here in Nebraska.
Was he?
I think they went to Iowa as well.
Yeah, but
so that was the real reason. Was it academics?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought he just liked Hayden Fry.
Yeah, well, that too. Who doesn't like Hayden Fry, right?
There you go.
I mean. I said 9-7 the final. Rob went up to 24-14 on this one. I think Iowa wins 9-7. Rob was at 24-14. I'm like, what crack pipe are you smoking? What side do you lean on, the lower end or the higher end of what we're talking about here?
That high above the total, that sounds like total of the year stuff coming out of Rob there. So just to throw the handicap.
I'm optimistic.
You're optimistic.
I'm optimistic.
Nebraska, they opened up a 1.5-point dog in this game, the Huskers, and they're now laying as many as 2 points. So, and early in the week, that's sharp money. The public doesn't get involved. They'll start getting involved a little bit earlier this week because it's a Friday game, but the public doesn't get involved until the day before or the day of the game more often than not. So this is sharp money, whether it wins or not, coming in on the Huskers. I got better things I can do with my money than to plunk down line-moving amounts of money on Iowa or Nebraska. I just got to say that. Anyway, the teams are both power rated. Here's why they're looking at Nebraska, some of the sharps. Neither one of these teams, it's kind of funny. You got Iowa, like, what are they, 20th in the AP poll or something like that?
It's 16th in the college.
They're like 6th. Yeah, they're 16th.
Yeah, moved up to 16th this week. You know where they're power rated by everybody who has a legitimate power rating?
35?
Outside the top 50.
Really?
Along with Nebraska.
Wow. I didn't
They're
know
fifth.
that.
I do mine and others do theirs.
If both Nebraska and Iowa actually had to go play teams outside of the Big Ten West, it'd be brutal.
We'll take them out of Las Vegas. Bring them out here. I'm getting cocky now.
You are.
But you know what? They're both power rated between 50th and 60th. So you're talking about pretty even football teams from the pro bettors perspective. And then you got home field, which doesn't mean, nearly what it used to in Lincoln, but it's still worth a couple of points. I made these teams. I made Iowa 1 point better than Nebraska on a neutral field. Let's throw in 2.5 points and you make Nebraska a 1.5 point favorite playing at Memorial Stadium, which means it's basically a 50-50 toss-up game as far as from a betting perspective is concerned. But you got, two of the top defenses, as we all know, and broken record. Can Nebraska sustain some drives after the first quarter to be able to, put some separation between themselves and another team? Probably not. What a great start last week for Chubba. And, my buddy down in Phoenix, Dan Minucci, who I do a show with him on Fridays, he was his quarterback whisperer, so to speak. He was in Dan Minucci's quarterback camp, just as Brock Purdy was, and what's his face, the kid who went to Spencer Rattler. He's one of them that was in his camp. So, I'm listening to him when Chubba came out of college or out of high school, was heavily recruited by Florida State, talking about, this kid's got the goods if he's coached up. And he wasn't coached up when he first got to Nebraska. Now he probably is. I don't know. Is he healthy? I heard he got a little banged up again. And that's
no. Coach Rule said today that he should be ready to go. So listen, if Nebraska wins this game, Chubba wins it for him. I do believe that. Rob and I talked about it. I still think Iowa's going to win, but if Nebraska doesn't turn the football over and Chubba gets better, I think Nebraska wins. Chubba wins it for him.
Okay, so here's how I'm looking at this. Probably Nebraska's biggest issue against Wisconsin was dealing with Mordecai. And you got a guy who, he's a solid athlete. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but the guy can run a bit.
Yeah.
And it really, really gave Nebraska fits. Is Deacon going to run on Nebraska?
Deacon had about a 12-yard run on third down on 3rd and 11 last week. But the dude weighs 258 pounds. He's a truck. He's not running anywhere.
And I guess that's where I look at this is, if he's back in the pocket and Nebraska can just kind of keep him there, I kind of worry about Iowa's ability to score points. And like I said, I get it. They don't have to score a lot because Nebraska's not going to score much.
You don't need to worry about Iowa's ability to score points because they don't score points.
The punt team's going to do that for them. Not the punt return. The punt team is going to score points.
Has Iowa faced a running quarterback? Have they really faced a legit?
The Paddock kid from Illinois last week wasn't bad. He came in. He did a decent job, but not really a true running quarterback like they'll see in Purdy. I guarantee they haven't seen a quarterback like they've seen in Chubba. And we showed it on the Doc's Diagnosis earlier this week. Chubba's got a step to where he can turn the Jets on like that.
We saw that in the opening.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, too, from a throwing the ball standpoint, desperate. He had one interception. It was Nebraska's only turnover, and it was basically a desperation throw, last play of the game in overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, he took care of the ball well.
Well, I only saw the first half, so I got to be honest with you guys. I only saw the first half. I had other games that had my betting attention. But here's the bottom line for me, and we've talked about this in some games earlier this year, like rematches from the year before. Is the point spread that has been adjusted like crazy does it really call for that, what we're seeing out of this year's teams compared to last year? Iowa was an 11-point favorite last year. Now they're getting to as many as 2 points. And we talked about the home field advantage in Lincoln isn't what it used to be, not even close. So you're talking about a 13-point line adjustment from last year's game to this year's game. Are you seeing – I'm not seeing enough of an Iowa drop-off or Nebraska, being better. They are better. They're banged up, but they're better than last year. But 13 points worth on an adjustment because of where they're playing, that doesn't jive with me in this one.
Interesting.
I think last year's game was an anomaly.
Because Iowa turned the ball over. But I will say this.
The turnovers. I mean, that was something Iowa doesn't do that they did last year in that one game. It's a complete anomaly.
But history will tell you, go back, I think starting 2018, these games are close, right?
Sure.
Iowa and Nebraska are going to play close games. It's probably going to be a field goal or a touchdown game. No more, no less than that. If it is something that's seriously wrong, you got a special team score, a defensive score, and maybe a lot of defense or turnovers in that matter too. So, I think it's gonna be a good one. Might be boring, but it's gonna be a good football game if you like close football games. Hey, don't forget you got the no sweat first bet offer. If you like one of the games we talked about tonight, these might be one of the games you do it on. So if you have BetFred in your state, when you sign up with BetFred on your Apple or Google Play store, make your first wager of $20 or more. It will be matched with a Fred bet up to $105 if your bet loses. Use the promo code RUSH. That's the promo code RUSH. You make sure to use all caps. You like parlays? How about the parlay bonus? When you place 9 football parlays, the 10th parlay is on Fred. Get rewarded with up to a $100 Fred bet each week of the pro football season. Use the promo code parlay. Again, all caps. And if you want to work with Scott Spreitzer directly, text the word DocTalk to the number 29022 and get a free $60 trial of the premium member picks from Scott, or you can visit DocSports.com, sign up for the free 60 on the upper left hand of the website. All right, guys, appreciate you guys taking the time. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you, and I hope you guys have a safe one.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Well,
enjoy the Italian.
And Scott, enjoy the Rebels playing some football. Look at it. He's just loving life. Loving life. This has been Behind the Point Spread, presented by BetFred Sports.